Thanks for joining me. We know these last 3 months have been challenging for Manitobans. It doesn't even feel like 3 months, does it? Sometimes, to me, it feels like 3 years. We've gone through a lot of challenges together. Many families have been juggling working from home, trying to assume new responsibilities as educators, students have been trying to complete their school year from home. Others have faced financial hardships, job loss of income, having to shutter a family business. We recognize those challenges are real, and we're excited to lessen those challenges as we move forward as much as we can. Our number one priority has always been, from the start of this unprecedented global pandemic, is to keep you and your loved ones safe and ensure a healthy Manitoba today and in the future as well. Notre priorité numéro une au cours de cette pandémie mondiale sans précédent a été de vous protéger, vous et vos proches, et d'assurer la santé du Manitoba aujourd'hui et pour l'avenir aussi. That's why our government has developed some of the most generous support programs in our country to help Manitobans navigate and to bounce back from this unprecedented time. We now have over 6,000 small businesses receiving their GAP funding of $6,000 through our Manitoba GAP program. That represents over $36 million of support for small businesses so far as they carefully reopen and expand the services that we know are important for us and that they offer. Over 300 more applications received just in the last 2 days alone, and that number continues to increase with every passing day. So we're on track to continue to fulfill our obligations to Manitoba's small business community to help them to get people back to work and to get the services up and running that you count on. On the Summer Student Recovery Plan, we've had over 1,400 employers already apply for a wage subsidy through the Summer Student Recovery Plan. That's a 50-50 deal up to $5,000 per hire. They've created together over 3,000 student positions so far. That's about a $15 million financial support that we're offering to small businesses and to our young people. Over 6,000 students have registered on the Students Job MB online matching tool, and that's thousands of students willing and able to get to work. So I encourage all our employers out there to consider hiring a student or more. We have a maximum of 5 on our program, but after you use our program, maybe you'd like to hire even more. Yesterday, we launched the online intake for the nonprofit Summer Student Incentive Grant. Now, when we say nonprofit, we're referring, of course, to charities and nonprofit organizations with this program. This program will provide an additional $6,000 for any nonprofit organization or charity that hires one summer student full-time. They'll also receive a subsidy at the end of the summer of an additional amount to cover half the cost of employing that summer student. So it's a good program, and I encourage nonprofit organizations and charities to use the program. Yesterday, we also announced, thanks to the input of literally dozens of labor organizations in our province, they gave us stakeholder input, and they decided that we should expand the risk recognition program to include more frontline workers. I think the deal was the original wage requirement was such that we weren't getting as many applications as we wanted. So based on stakeholder input, that program's been expanded to include hotel workers, business improvement zone staff like graffiti removal folks, street cleaners, distributors of COVID equipment, educational material, protective equipment. And so I encourage all eligible workers to apply for the program and view the full list of positions that are eligible for this shared compensation. It's a $120 million pot. So just simple math says if we get 120,000 people signing up for it, that's $1,000 for every one of them. We appreciate the work all our frontline workers have done, and we know also that there's the ability to demonstrate that in a real way with a a sharing of the lump sum that we've made available in partnership with the federal government. If you're interested in looking at that full list of eligible positions, just go to manitoba.ca/COVID-19/info Manitobans/mrrp.html. Now, the Manitoba Economic Support Center that we established continues to be a valuable resource for our nonprofits, charities, small business community, other community groups, to let them know about our support programs and other assistance available through the federal government as well. And we've had, just yesterday, we had over 1,100 inbound calls for that service. I continue to encourage Manitobans who want information on any of these programs to visit manitoba.ca/supports for business if they would like assistance of any kind. We are working to emerge from this COVID-19 pandemic stronger together, and our goal is to be more resilient than ever, and we're demonstrating that. Nous nous efforçons de sortir de la pandémie de COVID-19 plus fort, ensemble, plus résilients que jamais. On April 29th, our government unveiled Restoring Safe Services Together, Manitoba's Pandemic Economic Recovery Roadmap. It's a Manitoba plan. It was made for Manitobans by Manitobans with the goal of moving forward with confidence to slowly and carefully restart our economy and reopen our communities. Il s'agit d'un plan de Manitoba conçu pour les Manitobans pour aller de l'avant toute confiance, pour redémarrer lentement et soigneusement notre économie et rouvrir nos collectivités. The plan is evidence-based. It lays out the groundwork to ease public health measures. A critical element of our flattening efforts and what is contributing significantly to Manitoba's continued success is our levels of testing, tracking, and isolation. And your hard work and dedication, along with the early and decisive actions we've taken as a government and as people, have made a huge difference in our fight against COVID-19. There's a lot to take into consideration as we restore our services safely. We see around the world what happens in other jurisdictions where there has been a rush to try to get back to a normal that may not exist for some time, and that results in a COVID comeback. We can't have that here. We don't want that here. And so I want to say thanks to the tens of thousands of Manitobans who've given us advice, shared their thoughts, provided us with feedback as we've moved very carefully into our phased approach on economic and pandemic recovery. In total, just to share these numbers with Manitobans, we've had Manitobans engaging in various forms of feedback that we've established more than 120,000 times to provide input to us via town halls, via surveys, online submissions on phases 1 through 3. And we're seeing an increased willingness by Manitobans to share their perspectives with us as we move ahead in these phases. Thanks again to you. Thanks for doing the right things. Thanks to Team Manitoba for stepping up to the plate and playing a vital role in our recovery efforts. As a result of your hard work and based on advice from our public health experts, I am tremendously pleased today to announce that we will be able to move into phase 3 of our recovery plan beginning this coming Sunday, June 21st. Grâce à votre travail acharné sur les conseils de nos experts en santé publique, j'ai le plaisir d'annoncer que nous pourrons passer à la phase 3 à compter de ce dimanche 21 juin. Some of the changes that were made following public feedback to our plan include removing the maximum capacity of 300 people at any site, provided that the gathering can be physically divided into subgroups of 50 or fewer indoors or 100 or fewer outdoors to a maximum of 30% of their usual capacity. Also, allowing people from British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Northwest Territories, Yukon, Nunavut, and people living in the northwestern Ontario area west of Terrace Bay to visit Manitoba without having to self-isolate for 14 days. As well, ensuring that those traveling to northern Manitoba continue to respect the restrictions that have been put in place there. lifting self-isolation requirements on a case-by-case basis where sectors propose and provide satisfactory plans to address public health requirements for necessary travel. And as well, removing capacity limits in restaurants, bars, beverage rooms, brew pubs, microbreweries, and distilleries, as long as tables and seating are arranged so that there is a temporary or physical barrier between persons sitting at different tables. For a full list of these measures and guidelines for Phase 3, visit manitoba.ca/restoring safe services. Now, while we can take pride in the progress that we have made and the additional steps we're announcing today, we must remain vigilant. And as we move forward in our recovery efforts, we'll continue to review the data and rely on the advice of our healthcare experts. If public health results begin to deteriorate or our guidelines are not sufficient, Phase 3 measures might have to be paused, previous measures may have to be reintroduced. We're working with our public health officials to develop a rapid response system to guide future decisions. Each level will include a risk assessment and a range of measures that may be put into place at that particular level. I hope to share that information with you in the not too distant future. Now, there's no room for complacency. We do not want to have a COVID comeback here. What we want instead is a Manitoba comeback, and what better time of year and what better place to have a comeback than now in Manitoba. Il n'y a pas de place pour la complaisance. Nous ne voulons pas d'un retour COVID. Nous voulons un retour au Manitoba. Manitobans have stuck to the fundamentals. The success we've experienced is entirely due to you and your efforts. Thank you. Thank you for all the qualities you've demonstrated as people in the past number of months. Your strength, your empathy, your courage, your resilience has been put on display for all to see. Remember, we're in a marathon here. We're not in a sprint. And so what got us this progress is necessary to keep us progressing. I'm confident we will be successful. We will continue to be successful if we keep working together as a team. Thank you. Look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Reporters on the line, you are reminded you will have one question and one follow-up. We will start with CTV News, Jeff Keel.
Hi, Mr. Premier, Jeff Keel, CTV. Why move from the proposal of 75% for bars and restaurants to lifting the capacity entirely?
Well, we got a lot of input on that, Jeff, and of course on many aspects of the plan. I think that the consensus, certainly from people in the industry, was that they could continue to keep their customers safe, and they were clearly adamant, and I think we'd all agree that the restaurants have, and various other facilities have a lot at stake here too, that they want to protect their customers, but they felt that going to 75 wasn't going to give them any additional capacity to deal with the demand on their services, and they felt that the public safety could be protected with the distance requirements being adhered to. So for that reason, made that change in the rules. And I hope that the restaurant associations and the hospitality sector will continue with the great work they've done, but now they'll be able to accommodate a few more customers, and that's good for their business and good for Manitobans who want to support them.
And I guess a similar question for the travel and group sizing, some changes there. Why are you confident that that will be safe?
Well, because we're seeing the progress that's been made in Manitoba, and we know we're leading the way in many categories in this respect, but we've also seen good progress in Saskatchewan and Alberta, Northwest Ontario, BC, the territories too. And so we were one of the last two provinces to maintain the 2-week isolation period. We think that this is worth a try. We've seen in other jurisdictions they have higher numbers in most jurisdictions, but it hasn't been due to travel as much as other causes. And so we're hopeful that this is a measure that we can relax a little bit, and that will provide some real opportunities also for, in particular, I think, for business and small business opportunities that have been restricted very much up till now.
From the Winnipeg Free Press, Carol.
Good afternoon, Premier. It's Carol at the Free Press. One of the items in the final Phase 3 report talks about lifting self-isolation requirements on a case-by-case basis where sectors propose and provide satisfactory plans to address requirements for for necessary travel. But would there be any benefit? Would you consider it a benefit if there were direct flights from Winnipeg to Atlantic Canada where COVID-19 is under control? Would you be in favor of lifting the self-isolation requirement in that case?
Well, I think that's a good question for Dr. Roos and Carol. I think in terms of the case-by-case basis, I think more what the document was referring to was the sectors such as we alluded to in the draft document, like the film industry, which is such a big part, growing part of Manitoba's economy. It's exciting, but it involves a lot of people coming into Manitoba from other jurisdictions. And so I think what they're talking about there is looking at ways people can self-isolate in their own environment before coming here, as opposed to coming here and then self-isolating, that type of thing. And I understand the discussions. I did write the Prime Minister on this because there's some federal rules around these things that we need to coordinate as well. But just the willingness is there to work with the sectors in our economy to see if we can come up with plans that are still going to protect the public health interest while allowing them to get their people back to work.
And a follow-up question. Most of the recent COVID-19 cases here have involved interprovincial cross-border trucking. Why hasn't the province considered mandatory testing for cross-border and interprovincial truckers when they return?
Well, as far as the case numbers you're referring to in the trucking industry, they are tiny. And so going to impose on a significant industry in our province a major mandatory testing regime or any other measure as a consequence of what is a relatively small number of cases by any standard would be seen, I think, by the industry, and quite rightly, as an excessive intrusion and unnecessary given the numbers we're talking about. Relative to our numbers, because they are so small, it might seem like a larger percentage, but it is a very, very small number compared to the case numbers and positive test outcomes that we're seeing across all jurisdictions here and around the world.
From Global, Brittany.
Good afternoon, Mr. Premier. It's Brittany from Global News. When the draft plan came out, you guys were still trying to determine kind of just how far into Ontario you'd be willing to go for that lifting of the self-isolation rule. How did you guys arrive at that decision into how far you were going to allow it?
I think somebody in the drafting room didn't like Terrace Bay. I'm pretty sure that was the reason, Brittany. I have no idea, actually. I think the desire here was to consider as much as possible where there were low test results, low frequency of COVID cases, quite frankly, west of Terrace Bay, pretty low. So we do know there's a lot of activity between Manitoba and Ontario, business and other. And so I believe that the medical experts looked at that in the design of the plan.
Thank you. And I'm just wondering, as more places begin to open up, I know we still get emails and calls about people saying, some businesses not following that distancing rules. How is that monitoring going forward as more places start to open? And are we going to be hiring more people to kind of do a little bit of that monitoring?
Probably not hiring more. We equipped, as you know, previously, we're over 3,300 people now equipped to do ticketing and oversight and supervision. Our inspection regimes have stepped up in many categories. We've got not a ton of ticketing, Brittany. I mean, I've been frank about this. I'm disappointed that people need to be encouraged by way of us depriving them of money. But that being said, dozens of tickets issued, a lot of warnings, a lot of letters or communiques sent out to people who've pushed the rules to try to make sure that message is clear. Seems to be working, but you're quite right to express a concern going forward, because as restrictions are lifted, we expect there'll be more interactions. We hope that people will be able to get out and about more. There's a price to not lifting the restrictions too, and that's keeping people isolated and depriving them of a quality of life that we don't want to do too. So it's a trade-off, but always with the best interests of Manitoba's health as a first concern.
From the Brandon Sun, Drew.
Thank you. It's Drew May at the Brandon Sun here. Mr. Premier, in terms of ending the self-isolation requirement for people from Ontario, there are other parts of the province that are in phase 2 of Ontario's reopening. Was there any consideration given to tying that requirement or or not having people self-isolate to what phase Ontario or regions of Ontario are in?
Yeah, I get your point, Drew, and there is discussion underway about, obviously, we're not there yet. I'm reminded of my kids when we had the occasional drive vacation. That was all we ever heard from the back seat. We're hearing that from some Manitobans too. We're not there yet. We need to get there. We're moving steadily and carefully to open up our economy and our society again, with a balance to protecting public safety, always in consideration. And other jurisdictions are doing the same. As we move forward, we'll take a look at what others are doing. We'll take a look at the numbers, and we'll make the appropriate decisions, as I believe we are today after great consultation with Manitobans.
Thank you. And moving forward, will there be a phase 4 of the reopening plan, or will it be on a case-by-case basis for things that are still closed, like movie theaters and casinos?
Yeah, we'll need a couple of incubation periods, I expect, for almost all of this, Drew. So that's at least a month. There are you raised movie theaters. That's for many Manitobans, me included. That's an occasional break we like to have that we haven't had for a long time. But there are other venues that we have to consider as well. And so we'll be undertaking to follow our progress, monitor it as we are in other jurisdictions to make the right decisions going forward. And we'll do that carefully with health as the first concern.
From the Winnipeg Sun, Josh.
Good afternoon, Mr. Premier. This is Josh Aldridge from the Winnipeg Sun. Are you getting a sense of the success or difficulties of the first two phases for some businesses being able to actually open their doors? If this is to reopen the economy, restart the economy, are you getting a sense of some of the issues out there for a lot of these businesses that have for 2 months now or a month and a half now being able to reopen that are not able to open?
Well, we have, as you know, Josh, we have regular calls with a broad range of industry participants. Just yesterday morning, 50 groups, various kinds, across the full spectrum of our economy, providing feedback. We're looking for their feedback on some important issues right now. I might have more to say on that tomorrow. So that their feedback has been generally optimistic. Their input is valuable. We're acting on much of what we're hearing from these groups and obviously from the thousands of Manitobans. We all have a stake in this. We're all in this together. And so I wanted to use this opportunity just to say thanks to everybody who participated. I don't think I did that before, but thank you to you who gave us your feedback. We're listening and we're acting on what we hear. And what we're hearing is that the small business community is beginning to rebuild, retool, and rehire, and that's great. The preliminary indications are that our unemployment rate is going down, and we expect in a couple of weeks when the new employment numbers come out, we may have some really good progress to report. I am also really pleased. I noted that the projections put out by the Royal Bank last week for all provinces had Manitoba leading the way on recovery. That's exciting. That's exactly what we want to do. And it's really thanks to the folks out there who've done the right things on protecting our health and those who've been willing to make the investments in themselves and their small businesses to create jobs. That's the key to our progress here in Manitoba, and I'm excited to see if we can make those projections come true.
My follow-up is, today the Prime Minister announced he would provide a budget update in early July. Is the province planning on doing an economic or budget update as we start to emerge from this pandemic? And what is the economics looking like in this province at this point? I know there's been a lot of kind of doom and gloom, some mixed results out there regarding that.
Yeah, well, that's what we plan to do, and I'm hopeful we can get that out to the public to have a look at through, with your help, Josh, and others, before the end of June.
From CBC Radio Canada, Emily.
Good afternoon, Mr. Premier. I was just wondering that, it's pleased to hear that if public health results deteriorate, our guidelines are not sufficient, phase 3 measures may be paid or previous measures may be reintroduced. I'm just wondering how much time will you need to see if things are deteriorating, and how much time will you need to please vaccine measures that have been introduced earlier?
C'est un défi très difficile, mais c'est très important pour review, revenir, I'm not sure, je ne sais pas le mot, but to review les nouvelles résultats chaque jour. Les experts dans la santé publique vont continuer à provenir l'avis le gouvernement de Manitoba on a daily basis. So we continue to do this review of our progress. We hope it's continued progress in fighting COVID on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. As a follow-up, I'm not sure if this one has been asked already. Sorry, I couldn't hear very well. Just to make sure, what would be the next step then from now on? And what are what decisions are going to be from now on? About?
You were clicking a little bit in and out on me, but I think you're asking about progress going forward. My answer would be that we are hoping, obviously, that as we monitor the incubation period for COVID, we think normally in the 2-week period, we need a couple more incubation periods before we make any other significant announcements or measured changes. But we are hopeful we can continue in the positive direction. The positive direction we've achieved up till now has been because Manitobans have been doing the social distancing, staying home from work when they're ill, doing the hand washing. We need to continue to do those things. It's that discipline to follow the recommendations of the public health officials that has given us the right to say we are leading the country in many respects in fighting COVID. But we need to continue with the same discipline that got us this progress as we move forward, because we're not there yet.
From CBC Manitoba, Bart.
Mr. Premier, hi, Bart McKeevis here. So, in July, direct flights from Halifax will resume. The Maritimes have very low COVID-19 incidence and infection rates. Why no exemption for flights originating in Halifax?
Well, it's on the radar, literally. The plane will be on the radar too, Bart, and we are looking forward to continued broadening of the freedoms that we've had to deprive people of, I think out of necessity to some degree over the last few weeks and months. So certainly it's on the radar. We know that the progress that Premier McNeil and Nova Scotia has made, and our hearts go out to them, right? I mean, it's bad enough COVID. They had a horrible event with the mass murder there. They've had some other issues to deal with in that province, and our hearts go out to Nova Scotia. But as far as the issue you raise, I think obviously we're hopeful, and we'll continue to monitor the situation both there, here, and elsewhere to look at moving further restrictions back as we can do so safely in the future.
All right, and thank you for that. My second question, topic change. Could you please comment on the quashing of your wage freeze bill?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Could you please comment on the court quashing of your wage freeze legislation?
Sure. Well, negotiations are going to continue in earnest, and they'll have to respond to the restrictions that the judgment defined, pending decisions on damages and discussions around appeals.
From the Canadian Press, Steve.
Premier, just following up on Josh's question, you mentioned an economic update coming by the end of June. I assume, is that a full fiscal update? Are we going to get a new deficit figure? And can you tell us what that deficit figure might be?
Well, I'll tell you when I tell you. I know that the Treasury Board and finance officials are working diligently on numerous files right now, put it mildly. But I can also tell you that it's our intent, because, of course, it's been a really dynamic time. I think every Manitoban understands that. We are wanting, in the name of transparency and in the interests of public information, to get updated numbers out. So my goal would be to do that. If I can't do it before July 1st, I'll be disappointed, and I'm sure you'll remind me on July 2nd.
And a question about the new rules. Some churches in the southern part of the province have got together and they've launched a letter-writing campaign that they're planning to send you the letter at the end of the week. They're calling for a full reopening of church services with no limitations, no restrictions on what they consider to be a charter right. How do you respond to that?
I don't. I would say that public health orders issued by our medical advisory team led by Dr. Brent Rusin will be followed, and they'll be followed in all cases. I want to say thanks to everybody. We have I think, interesting announcement to share with you tomorrow, but I won't steal my own thunder by sharing it with you today. I also wanted to say to anyone out there who, like me, enjoys running, that be careful in this hot, humid time we're in right now. But I also wanted to express my sympathies to those who I know have tremendously in the past enjoyed the Manitoba Marathon and haven't had the chance to do it this year. I know I see a lot of people out running and exercising. I know for many dedicated runners, this has been a ritual and an enjoyable one for many years. So I just wanted to say thinking of you, and you know, be careful out there, and we'll get back to it next year, we hope. All the best. We'll beat this thing.